It is remarkable and it's inspiring to think that we really do have an opportunity to have impact and really affect and change the world. So with that, the first half of my career at DOE, I worked in the nuclear nonproliferation, warhead security, and related areas. International nonproliferation, foreign intel, even nuclear security oversight. It was only in 2006 that I had the opportunity to come to the Office of Nuclear Energy and experience the other side of the nuclear coin, the peaceful application of nuclear energy. And what I was really blown away from the beginning as far as how complex and how much of a role the Department of Energy has played in nuclear. In fact, in many respects, we are the pioneers for nuclear energy. So let me talk about changing the world. Let me say this. First of all, you can't even barely see this. This I have here is a mock-up of an LEU, low-enriched uranium pellet. One pellet of many that comprise ultimately a reactor core. We have 99 reactors operating in this country. This one pellet provides the equivalent of 17,000 cubic feet of natural gas, the equivalent of a ton of coal, and the equivalent of 149 gallons of oil, just from this one pellet. And so and on top of that, this one pellet, which consists of the magic of the uranium-235 isotope that Mother Nature made, not us. We simply harnessed it. And through the magic of neutrons firing out from a uranium-235 isotope that is naturally occurring from the ground that you extract, and simply by enriching it and concentrating up to U-235 to about 4.5%, you've got this incredible, really history-altering energy source. This little source, this pellet, will continue to produce electricity in our reactors for 18 months. It's like putting a log in your fire, and it goes for 18 months. And this is an incredible breakthrough that the Department of Energy pioneered. And in fact, it was 1945 when Oak Ridge National Lab and then 51 with Idaho National Lab actually lit up light bulbs using a small nuclear reactor. So this has literally changed the world in many respects. And the Department of Energy's DNA for the nuclear industry around the world, there's about 450 reactors around the world. Virtually every one of the reactors has our DNA in it. The US government, the US Department of Energy, our national labs. And by the way, the 17 national labs, I spend most of my time working internationally, and I can assure you the Department of Energy and our national labs are beyond, I would say, any other scientific and technical reputation of any other national labs in any other country. We are preeminent, and we continue to be seen that way. So what are we talking about before I talk about the global state of play? With the reactor here, what we're talking about is taking one of these pellets and stacking them up in a tube, about 360 of these pellets stacked up in one tube. And then let's go one step further. Let's have about 260 tubes. Those 260 tubes are then married up into this design here, into what's called a fuel assembly. You take that fuel assembly, and then you make about 160 of those. With 160 of these, you've got yourself a nuclear reactor core. And really, it's Mother Nature doing its work. It's simply a heat source. You've got the decaying of the uranium isotope 235 doing its magic with neutrons firing into other nuclei with neutrons and hitting that pinball effect. Every time it hits another nuclei, you got energy produced. And it's a chain reaction that's controlled with moderators. So really, it's quite a remarkable feat, which was pioneered in large part by the Department of Energy. So what do we have now? We have the United States with 20% of our electricity. That's 1 out of every 5 homes in our country. They turn the lights on. They get their electricity from nuclear power. And the nuclear power plants operate now, most of them are licensed for 60 years. So these are incredible assets. And not only is nuclear from an electricity generation an incredible asset, and one clear reason why so many countries are still continuing to pursue nuclear energy, despite some of the very large capital costs. On average, one reactor may cost you about $6 to $8 billion before financing. It may take you 4 to 5 years from beginning to end for construction. And then on top of that, you do have public sentiment that is concerned about safety. You have Fukushima. You have other issues. Yet we have 30 countries with nuclear still today. We have dozens more planning to build nuclear. I would submit that in part it is the unique attributes of nuclear energy, the concentrated, efficient energy that comes out of such a small source and that continues 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. All out, rain, sleet, or snow, you've got base load, electricity. And then on top of that, it's complementing our other very important sources, whether it's coal, whether it's natural gas, whether it's renewables. So in addition to the electricity, though, what is fascinating is how many different ways nuclear energy is utilized, whether it's in the agricultural field, medical field, isotope productions that are for medical isotope purposes, and other issues, industry, desalinization. And one of my personal favorites is it's a mission that is unique to and a core mission of the Office of Nuclear Energy, and that is space radiological sources, or what we call Rtgs, radiological thermoelectric generators. And essentially what it is it's not uranium-235, it's plutonium-238, which is a byproduct of the natural U-235 process, and then extracting that plutonium-238, and you have a heat source. And so basically these radiological thermoelectric generators are basically radiological batteries. And where have they been used? I can tell you where one is. One is now outside of our solar system. It went past Pluto not too long ago. And we have others. We have the rovers on Mars. They are being powered by radiological thermoelectric generators that were produced by DOE, by the Idaho National Lab. We're very proud of that, and hopefully we may well see some of the Mars missions in the future being powered by the plutonium-238 sources that the Department of Energy produces. So we literally do change the world in many ways by just some of our missions that we're doing. Domestically, especially with this administration, with our president, jobs, American manufacturing, reconstituting, and in particular with nuclear energy, our critical infrastructure, much of which we have been losing. But the one thing about the U.S. nuclear fleet is it's still the largest by far in the world. 99 reactors out of about 450 or so around the world. So we're almost about one-fourth of the entire fleet of nuclear power plants around the world. And each one, if you look at it as equivalent of $5 to $8 billion, you're talking $500 billion of critical power generating infrastructure right here in the United States. And these nuclear power plants serve as anchors to many communities. A lot of times these nuclear power plants are outside large cities, and they're anchored by small towns. And the one thing about nuclear power plants is that they generate long, sustained, well-paid, skilled jobs. Not just white-collar jobs, but many skilled blue-collar jobs. And in fact, when you're talking about construction, we have 4 units under construction in Georgia and South Carolina. You're talking about just one site, one of the largest construction projects in the country is 4,000 to 5,000 jobs. I went down there recently in Vogel, and you're seeing 4,000 to 5,000 hard-headed, really skilled technicians, electricians, pipe fitters, welders. It is breathtaking to see how massive it is. And frankly, it gives me a lot of pride to see the United States still doing these types of huge scale construction projects. Internationally, it's extremely competitive. Back in the 70s and 80s, the United States dominated the global nuclear market. We actually controlled about 90% of the nuclear market. Today, about 20% and barely hanging on. Our stiffest competition are state-owned enterprises from China, from Russia, and other countries. This is not just a commercial calculus. Internationally, there's a reason why President Putin personally leads efforts to secure a $20, a $30 billion deal in a particular country like Turkey. There's a reason why President Xi personally leads efforts to secure a $10, $20, $30 billion deal in the United Kingdom. This is not just an economic calculus. This is strategic. You set a 40, 50, 60, maybe even 80-year relationship with that supplier country and that receiver customer country. And the amount of the deals themselves are among the largest in the world. Korea won a 4-unit deal, first plant to be built on the Arabian Peninsula, almost done for the first unit, and that's in Baraka, the United Arab Emirates. That was described as the largest commercial deal in Korea's history. This is larger than their auto industry, their IT. These are big deals and they generate thousands of jobs. Just $1 billion worth of export for, let's say, an $8 billion deal for 1 unit. $1 billion translates for US export, translates in about 5,000 to 10,000 jobs, with a huge bow wave of infrastructure as well. So nuclear energy actually is extremely well positioned for this administration, for our priorities, to help generate American jobs through exports. And these are just examples of some of the projects that are ongoing now that are being built by American companies, in particular from Westinghouse. Sandman in China, I've been there. Summer in Georgia, in South Carolina. Vogel in Georgia, and Haiyang, I've been there as well. And it's remarkable to see these projects. They're enormous, and they're huge jobs generators. So a couple of other things, and I'm going to run out of time. But first and foremost, the Office of Nuclear Energy within the Department of Energy, I would argue, is unique within the entire executive branch. I would argue that there is not a single other office in the executive branch that has a straight up full spectrum nuclear energy. That's our mission. It's not just like the NRC where it's safety or security. It's not NNSA where it's non-proliferation primarily or security. It's not State Department where it's primarily policy driven. We have the whole enchilada. We have the full spectra from near-term deployment to long-term R&D, including leveraging our laboratories. And we have that reach back that really sets us apart. 2 more slides. One is, this is illustrative of how the Department of Energy plays in the executive branch for exports. And within the Department of Energy, the White House, the Department of State, Department of Commerce, and others, they look to us. They very much need and rely on the Department of Energy as the experts, as the deep bench, as the reach back capability for everything from advanced reactor cooperation that we might have with Japan to advanced fuel cycle work with other countries in Korea, or near-term commercial opportunities supporting, which is a priority, our industry gaining footholds and market opportunities internationally where our work is complementing theirs. So we play a key role. Lastly, looking to the future, in fact, I go back to the very beginning, what our secretary said, we really do. And this is not an understatement. We change the world. We have changed the world many, many times over. And we have the opportunity to think boldly and do the same in the future, in particular in nuclear energy. The designs and the reactor designs, for example, that are in the process of being developed for commercial deployment are orders of magnitude more advanced, more inherently safe, and more inherently efficient, and potentially much more affordable than the reactors that are operating today, which are also safe. So we have a tremendous opportunity leveraging our national labs, working with industry, and having this industry-focused endeavor where what we're doing is trying to clear the pathway for industry's innovation and partnering with our national labs and the overall Department of Energy. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for coming and listening, and I look forward to hearing from our other speakers. Thank you very much.